Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 541st episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. What if you could stop relying on going to the grocery store to get eggs and milk? Here at the Urban Farm, I love my chickens, and thanks to my dozen hens, we get 8 to 10 eggs a day to fry up for breakfast or use in omelets, cakes, baked goods, and to share with our families and friends and so much more. The thing is, I don't trust a lot of the food from the grocery store. Factory farmed eggs have lower levels of nutrients than Heidi's happy, healthy hens that live in our backyard. When I get eggs and milk from the animals that I raised, I know that it's as nutritious as possible, and I become much less dependent on the industrial food system. I want to challenge you to expand your idea of what it means to grow food. If you don't have livestock, consider waking up every day to fresh eggs. If you already have layers, imagine how it would feel to also get fresh milk and cheese from your yard. You can play with these possibilities by attending our Backyard Barnyard Summit coming up this June. It's completely free, online, designed to show you exactly what it takes to raise livestock in your yard, even if you live in the city. After this summit, you will know which urban animals will work in your yard, plus what you need to do to successfully raise them. Learn more and sign up at backyardbarnyardsummit.com. Today on our podcast, we have someone who is bridging the gap between farmers and consumers. We're talking with Trevor Williams about farming podcasts. Trevor is a former high school agriscience teacher, now software analyst, and host of the podcast Farm Traveler. He graduated with a major in agriculture education and communication and a minor in environmental horticulture from the University of Florida, and is a former Florida Future Farmers of America state officer. Congratulations on that. Trevor taught agriscience classes for 2 years in Daytona Beach, Florida, and helped direct a career academy focused on horticulture and aquaculture. After 2 years, he moved closer to home, and in order to stay involved in agriculture while working as a software analyst, he started Farm Traveler in 2016 with the motivation and editorial experience of his wife, Allie. As host and producer of the Farm Traveler podcast, he pretty much does it all to make it work. Welcome to the show today, Trevor. Are you ready to rock?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Excellent. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Absolutely. So, yeah, good little intro. You get a little bio. So I grew up in Blountstown, Florida, little 3-stoplight town in northwest Florida. Was super active in ag and SFA in high school. Was fortunate enough to be a state officer in Florida from 2009 to 2010. Traveled across the state, kind of promoting the FFA and the agriculture industry. It was a great time. And then I went to University of Florida, even though I'm a diehard Seminole fan. So that was kind of interesting to say go Gators for a couple of years. But
There you go.
I still say go Noles. And then after graduating in 2014, I taught in Daytona Beach, Florida. Taught for about 2 years, had a great time, had some really cool kids in my FFA chapter and career academy. But we were I'm kind of a homebody, so I missed being around my family up in Northwest Florida. So I moved back, took up a job as a software analyst with a government contractor, and I missed being a part of the ag industry. And so started Farm Traveler just as like a little blog. And then as podcast started booming last year, decided, hey, let's start a podcast. And we're approaching about a year of the podcast come this April. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little short, sweet, and to the point story about how I got here.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the podcast. I'm 4.5 years into ours, and I know how much work they are. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you've definitely got some time up on me, that's for sure. And yours is super successful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's just, people tell me that all the time. And really what it's about, here's the secret, everybody. Just don't stop.
Yep.
Just
don't stop. Yep.
Just don't stop. If you have a vision, this is what we're supposed to do in the world, just don't stop. Keep doing it. And then after 20 or 30 years, you become a success overnight.
There is no such thing as an overnight success.
Right?
Usually we see it after people have been grinding for 5 or 10 years. Yep.
So tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, so on it, it's a weekly podcast. Every Wednesday, we interview farmers, ranchers, agriculture entrepreneurs, extension agents, you name it. Basically, anybody involved in agriculture, whether that's on the production side or on the scientific research side. And it's all kind of to help bridge the gap between farmers and consumers, kind of show people what exactly goes into their food, how it's produced. And we've interviewed a bunch of really cool people. We've interviewed people from the UK, from Canada, from Saudi Arabia, and of course here in the United States. So we've had a bunch of really cool guests talking about things ranging from GMOs to dairy to organic crops, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's been really cool.
Awesome. Well, and why do you think that farming is a topic that people want to hear about?
So I've been trying to work on this perfect elevator speech because I think that food is something we all have in common. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from, your race, your gender, your beliefs, anything. Like, we've all got to eat 3 times a day, no matter what our diet is. And nobody really knows where their food comes from. I mean, you just go to a grocery store, you cook it, and that's it, or you go out to eat, and that's pretty much it. That's all you really think about it. And I mean, I think it's something that we really need to pay attention to, especially in this age of misinformation and, fake news. There's a lot of false label claims out there and just fake news that can not only cost you and your family at the grocery store or at a restaurant, but it's also hurting those hardworking men and women who are producing the safest, most abundant food supply the world's ever seen. And so I think it's something we all have in common and something we need to do a better job at kind of researching for ourselves and kind of learning where our food comes from and what we can do to learn more and to be proactive about seeing where our food comes from and how exactly it's produced.
Excellent. And what are you finding in almost 50 episodes?
Finding that a lot of farmers are kind of, the communication gap between farmers and consumers, they think it's slowly going down, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there, like I said, but they're finding that more and more consumers are going to social media to kind of find farmers and ranchers and see firsthand what's going on. And a lot of those farmers and ranchers are showing their daily life, like what's it like on a ranch, or what kind of research are they doing, or they're explaining using Instagram stories why they're using a certain pesticide or why they're giving their cow medicine, just stuff like that. And so they think the relationship is improving, which is phenomenal, but it's still got a ways to go.
So you've got almost 50 episodes out. What was one of the most exciting ones for you, or the one of the most impactful ones for you?
Oh, man, the most impactful, I would say there are probably 2 that kind of stand out. One was with a dairy farm in the UK called Vine Farm Dairy, and that was our first international guest on the show. And they have this really cool concept where instead of collecting the milk from the cows and shipping it off to get processed, they process it there on site. And what they have a milk vending machine. And so people in their local community can come up, bring their own glass bottle, fill up the jug with milk, and then go home. So they're saving with transportation costs, and they're making a huge agribusiness where people can come see firsthand how their milk is made. And so that was really cool to not only see like what's going on in the ag industry in another country, but to see a cool, sustainable method where they're not transporting it anywhere was really neat.
Wow. Hold on. I'm going to stop you on that one. That is epic.
Yeah. I know, right? Yeah, it was so cool to hear them do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting chills as you're sharing about that. It's like, that's the kind of innovation we need to see in our food system.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And they don't sell plastic. They encourage people to use glass jugs. Mm-hmm. They sell their own glass jugs up there. And so it's so neat. And they won several awards in the past couple of years for innovation in the UK for agriculture and for dairy. I mean, it's so cool because they're building that relationship between them and their local consumers. And so it's such a cool idea.
Well, and I can hear how passionate you are about this whole topic.
Yeah, I try to be a little bit passionate about it. I mean, in no way, shape, or form am I like an expert, but I feel like I know a decent amount, and I know, at least when we're doing the interviews, the right questions to ask. And so I've learned a great deal doing this podcast, and so it's been a really cool experience.
That's my favorite thing. My favorite thing is getting people like you on the podcast and talking to them and learning from them, because I am in no way, shape, or form an expert. I'm just tapping people, just exactly what you said. I just tap people and have a conversation and ask the right questions. And I get to learn so much. That's my favorite part of my job. And it sounds like it is for you too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's like 2 big philosophies when it comes to life. There's either people that think you need to be the smartest person in the room, or there's people that believe you never should be the smartest person in the room. And
Right.
So I'm the latter. Like, like, I always don't want to be the smartest person in the room, so you can learn from everybody, whether that's people in ag or outside of ag or whatever discipline they're studying. Like, just surround yourself with smart people and you'll learn a whole bunch.
That is the case. Anyways, from my experience, that is the case. So that was one podcast that stood out. You were going to a second one. I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, so the second one, so I'm kind of a big geography nerd. My dad's a history and geography teacher, so I guess that's kind of why it spread off. And I'm also a hydroponics nerd. I love anything about hydroponics. And so one of our recent episodes was with a company in Saudi Arabia called Red Sea Farms. And they are using salt water to grow tomatoes. I mean, obviously in the Middle East, they have a lot of salt water, not a lot of fresh water. And so they're tapping into that resource that they have to grow tomatoes hydroponically in that environment. And so just the research that they've done and kind of learn what they're doing to kind of use hydroponics to make agriculture much more sustainable was neat to hear. And also kind of the ag industry in the Middle East was kind of neat to hear too.
Wow. They're growing tomatoes with salt water.
Yeah, they use it a couple of ways. One, they use it for the water in the system, and they get out, like, the tomatoes don't really taste salty at all, which was really funny. I thought they would, but and then they also have, in the greenhouses, they have the big cooling racks, and so they also use the salt water with cooling. And so they're using it in multiple ways instead of just for irrigating the crop.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really neat to kind of hear from them. And their founder was not from Saudi Arabia. He was from South Dakota, or South or North Dakota, one of the Dakotas. So it was kind of cool. He was from America's heartland, and he wound up in Saudi Arabia still doing agriculture.
Nice. Well, and in your bio, I noticed that you mentioned aquaculture. Talk to me a little bit about aquaculture, because I have a long-standing relationship with aquaculture. When I was in my teens, I was actually raising fish for people to eat on a small scale in my backyard.
Okay.
But tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've kind of had a cool relationship with it too. Growing up, my grandpa had a farm right behind our house, and it was a hybrid bass operation. So he had, I think, like 3 or 4  5-acre ponds that he would just raise catfish or raise the hybrid bass in. Now it's catfish. So he'd raise the fish, seine them, we'd ship them off, and it was a really neat experience to be a part of. And I mean, fish are so much more efficient in terms of feed conversion. Like, for every pound a fish eats, they gain 1 pound of mass. I think a cow takes like 7 pounds of feed to gain 1 pound. And so, I mean, you can combine with aquaculture, you get protein, fish, and then you can get produce. And so I think it's such a cool, like, way to grow food that's very sustainable. I mean, you have limited water runoff from growing the crops, and you have a natural filter with the plants that are, recycling the fish poo. And so I think it's just a very cool, sustainable method I think should be used much more than it is. I mean, as people learn about it, they're like, wait, that's like an actual thing. And my favorite ride at Disney World, Epcot, is the Land, where they have numerous aquaponics systems going on. And I just think it's so neat. And definitely, I think it might be the answer for sustainable agriculture in the future.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you on that. For our listeners that don't know what aquaponics is, give us a short description of that.
Yeah, so aquaculture is the process of growing fish for food. Hydroponics is the process of growing plants in water, like water as a substrate. And aquaponics is the process of growing fish and plants in the same system. So basically you have a big tank with the fish in it, the fish poo. The water is then filtered to the plants where the roots take up the nutrients in the water. Then fresh water is returned to the fish. So it's a perfect little cohesive relationship between the plants and the fish.
A good buddy of mine here in Phoenix, Edmund Williams, has something he calls a Leer Garden. And what he's done with it, and he's been on the podcast, what he's done with it is he's doing aquaponics with soil.
Really? Okay. How does he do that?
Well, it's really interesting, and I wouldn't have believed it, except we set up a system here at my house 4 months ago, and it grows food like I cannot even tell you. It is an amazing way to grow food. So basically you have your aquaculture pond, your fish pond below, that pumps up water through a growing bed, but just happens to be that this growing bed has soil in it. And
well, there you go. That's cool.
They really work well. It's one of the things I love about our industry is how innovative people are getting and the stuff that people are coming up with to grow food in cities. Because I personally believe that the place that we're going to solve the food systems problem is in the cities themselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been trying to get them on the show for forever. But one company I've always been watching is Gotham Greens. And they have
my God.
stuff in New York, Chicago.
Oh,
Yeah, they're just converting these huge warehouses, and now they've been building these huge greenhouses so they can supply local produce to huge cities. And I think that's so key.
Well, I have a story to tell you about that. I actually know Jen Nelkin. Actually, she's married now, so she's got a different last name. And I've been trying to get her on my podcast. She and I went to college together 20 years ago, and I've been trying to get her on my podcast, and they're just so dang busy that, good luck trying that. It's been a challenge, but I will continue, and you should too.
Hey, well, there you go. That's cool.
Because Gotham,
small world.
Yeah, exactly. Because Gotham Greens, if you haven't heard of it, listeners out there, go check it out. Gotham Greens, they're an amazing company. So who makes up your audience? Who's listening to you?
Yeah, so, of course, with any podcast you make, a lot of it are friends and family. That's kind of how I started it. And now I'd say we've gotten feedback from where it's about 60% farmers and ranchers that are kind of curious to learn about what other people are doing.
Wow.
And then 40% are consumers. And so, I'm hoping that more and more consumers start to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, for right now, those are some pretty good demographics. So I think farmers are curious to learn about what's going on across the world, across the country, as well as consumers kind of slowly getting more curious to learn about where their food comes from.
Nice. And you think you're making a difference?
I would hope so. I think the thing is a lot of farmers want to share their stories. They just don't really have the time or the resources to do it. But I think with social media and with things like our podcast, I think that it's giving them numerous opportunities where they can do it. And we've gotten some feedback from our listeners or from guests, and they're like, man, this was a really cool experience, or this was a great opportunity to come on to share a story. So I think it's making a difference, which is, it makes all the hard work definitely worth it.
Oh, that is the case. And I think you're making a difference. And
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
We need, we need to be getting the word out. You said it earlier. We need to be getting the word out about where our food comes from and how to grow our own. Because I believe, and it sounds like you do too, that that's the most important thing we can be doing right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So given that, we have over 500 episodes of our podcast out, I know what it takes. So I'm wondering how you do it all. How do you do this whole podcast yourself?
It's a lot of planning. It's a lot of organization. Right now, it's fun to find guests. Like usually I'll get on Instagram or just somehow get emails of contacts. I'll email them, schedule them, come up with scripts, edit it, record it. I've tried to just not do it every single night. That was a struggle whenever we were starting off with. I thought I had to do something about it every single night. But now I'm trying to record them once or twice a week, setting up interviews that way, and then editing on Tuesday nights before they go live, and working on our websites every now and then during the day, posting on social media every other day. So it's been a very interesting experience to not get overworked by it, and to kind of not get burnt out, and to just plan and organize all the tasks that need to be done to accomplish it as effectively as possible. It's certainly an ongoing exercise, that's for sure, but I'm definitely learning as the podcast grows how to manage my time a little bit more efficiently as I kind of juggle this with everyday life and with my normal day job and stuff like that.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it.
Absolutely. So when I taught high school for 2 years, we have a bunch of competitions in the SSA and stuff like that. And I was preparing my kids, which our chapter is about 20 kids. We had some public speaking and some meat judging competitions going on. And I didn't really prepare them as best as I should. Our practices weren't really cohesive. They weren't scheduled well. We didn't really have the appropriate content. And so, of course, whenever we went to those competitions, we didn't place. We did very poorly. And so we really had a come to Jesus meeting with the kids. And I was like, hey, guys, let's do better next year. Here's how we're going to accomplish that. And we kind of laid out a roadmap on what we were going to do, how we were going to plan our times, what competitions we were going to do. And we learned to be prepared, basically the 3 Ps. And so the next year, going into year 2, we had a game plan about what competitions or career development events we were going to do, who was going to do them. And we really just kind of planned our practices, got the right resources. And so I definitely learned that planning, if you don't plan, you're going to fail. But if you plan to not fail, you're probably going to succeed. So that was a great thing that I learned in that whole failure situation.
Yeah, no kidding. And your biggest success?
Yeah, so again, going off of teaching. So I was part of a career academy, and in Volusia County, career academies are kind of help students decide what job they want to get. And so ours was horticulture, environmental, and marine science based. Well, we were switching it up to be aquaculture, environmental, and marine science. And so all the academies are ranked in terms of quality. You have like bronze, silver, and gold. And so I had come in after an old teacher, and they hadn't placed in about 3 or 4 years. And my first year there, we didn't place because I really had no idea what was going on with it, and it was just kind of thrown at me. And then at the second year, we had a lot better organization. All the teachers were kind of buying in. All the science teachers were. All the students were buying in. We had career academy officers, and we wound up getting silver level, which was the second highest level you can get category-wise. And it was a great accomplishment for our teachers, for our students, and it was really cool to kind of see all the kids buy in and realize that they are helping with the rebranding effort, and that it's just as much for them as it is for the school and for the community. And so that was just a huge success to kind of have a very successful rebranding with that career academy.
Nice. What drives you?
I'd say two things: a love for Chick-fil-A and improvement. Like I've been trying to listen to like improvement podcasts and just people that are kind of all about self-development. And one of my high school ag teacher always used to say, "Leave it better than you found it." And I think that can apply for you, can apply for your friends, for your family, for your work. And so not only self-improving yourself, but also improving community, your industry, whatever you're a part of, trying to improve that. And so that's something that I would say drives me. It's something that I've got to focus more on, but it's definitely something that I try to help drive my focus and drive how I spend my time.
Nice. And one book for our listeners?
So I'm a huge Mike Rowe fan. I love his podcast, his TV shows, everything. My wife bought me his book, The Way I Heard It by Mike Rowe, and it's all about kind of the stories from his show, as well as neat little anecdotes throughout his life and lessons he's learned. So it's a really cool book, and it's not one of those, it's like he describes it as a coffee table book. And so you can pick it up whenever to read it. It's super fun, super addicting, and that's one of my favorite books right now.
Nice. Yeah, he's got a couple of new shows, doesn't he? He was here in Phoenix showing off one of our local restaurateurs, and it was a really good segment.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, he's on Facebook. He's got, I think Mike Rowe returns the favor, to where he kind of helps like great people in communities that are kind of sacrificing themselves, and he helps the community give back to those people. And so that's really cool. But yeah, he's got a lot of irons in the fire, that's for sure.
Yeah, cool. And a final piece of advice for our listeners?
Oh man, that's a big one. I would say don't compare yourself, whatever that comes to, whether it's comparing yourself to other podcasters or other growers or really just anybody out there. You're always going to compare yourself because you want to be as successful as possible. But there's people out there that have been working 5, 10, 25 years longer than you have and are more successful than you. But there are also people that are just starting out that you are much more successful than. And we all have a different path. We all have a different story. So I think the key thing is don't compare yourself. Just judge yourself on if you are better than you were yesterday, then you're good, then you're improving. So don't compare yourself to other people and other successful people that you're trying to idolize and try to follow.
And tell me, what is I'm kind of going off script here a little bit. What is your intent for the podcast and Farm Traveler?
So the future goals for the podcast, we're going to start doing different seasons, and each season we're starting off season 2 being organic versus traditional agriculture. And with each new season, we're going to cover a key topic, whether that's organic or GMOs or labels, whatever it is. We're just going to do it to where we can learn from different people with different viewpoints. We're not going to get political. We're not going to make one side look better than the other. We're just going to learn from all facets involved to kind of see what's going on. And so to do that and continue to grow the podcast and hopefully reach more consumers as a goal. And I'd say probably the big term goal is I would love to have like a YouTube or some sort of web series where, Farm Traveler, we're actually traveling to farms and seeing what's going on. Like we're actually visiting dairy farms, ranches. We're visiting scientists or ag entrepreneurs or professors or extension agents. And we're out there in the field seeing what's going on, and we can have a very visual experience and hands-on experience to see what's actually happening in the ag industry. So I'd say that's like a 5 to 10 year plan. So continue to grow the podcast, and the brand overall is definitely a plan for this year and kind of growing forward.
Nice. I like that. I think that there is a really, really good opportunity there for you on that. I know that I'd love this, it's like Mike Rowe going to farms and you'd be doing that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I love Dirty Jobs, and I mean, this is kind of inspired by Dirty Jobs, but it's just fully focused on the ag industry. And so I think people are very visual. I mean, podcasts cover the auditorial learners, but I think visual people want to see something where we actually go to farms and see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know Mike Rowe visited our state here and talked with Hickman's Eggs. He was out at the Hickman's Egg facility here a few years ago. That was interesting.
Oh, I bet it was. That's neat. Love Mike Rowe. Love Mike.
I can tell. So tell me about your podcast and your blog.
The blog, which is just thefarmtraveler.com, we have articles on our podcast episodes and just articles where we talk about anything ag-related. But yeah, the podcast, I mean, we're looking to get more and more people on. We're looking to get more and more, hopefully more of an international flair where we can have more and more people from around the world sharing what they're doing and sharing how the whole ag industry is going on around the world. And I've been trying to have a larger YouTube presence. We're trying to do like video breakdowns of some episodes, but really I'm going to try to focus on that later on in the year. But right now we're just trying to focus on building that, that core group of listeners and followers where we can kind of grow organically.
Pun intended.
I know, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Trevor.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we got a chance to talk.
How can our listeners find you?
So they can find us on iTunes, Spotify, whatever app they listen to their podcast. Just look up Farm Traveler Podcast and you will find us. We're also active on our website, thefarmtraveler.com, as well as our Instagram page, which is just farm_traveler, as well as Facebook, which is just The Farm Traveler. Basically, wherever you are, look up Farm Traveler and you will definitely find us.
Awesome. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/farm traveler. Hey, if you've enjoyed this podcast and are interested in listening to my first podcast series, Freshly Green from 2007, you can subscribe to support the Urban Farm Podcast. With that, you will have access to Freshly Green and so much more bonus content. Visit urbanfarmpodcast.org to find out more and to pledge your support.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.